What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Mike Lang, one half of the Intelligent Hoodlums with the homie webs. Once again, it is Sunday, fun day. Uh, Audio issues. We're gonna try to figure them out. This is very interesting. Interesting. Just when you think everything is good, everything isn't good.
Fly.
Indeed.
Oh, wait a second. I can hear it, but not as bad. Oh, and then I'm like way off. Try this. There we go. Now I'm in my space.
I think beta, but I can't hit the echo cancellation on your side, but it's all good. Today's show, we're gonna go to Canvas themed shows for a while, just to ensure that we're not gonna go full blown into how you can do a lot of things. We're gonna keep things kind of relatively simple, but we are gonna go into like some basics in terms of changing, if you're a CCSD teacher, changing your uh, virtual instruction from Google Classroom to Canvas tonight. And we have as always, we're joined with our resident software developer type person who is going to kind of talk to us about change a little bit, Webs. And uh, one of the things I was very interested in was the idea that you have to deal with change quite a bit in your gig. I'm assuming would that be accurate?
Yeah, that's super accurate.
So, I ask a software developer question, and I like, how do you handle that change, seeing that it's probably a constant, and how would you recommend like a teacher person that has been using a particular way to get their information to their students the entire year, and that now is going to be asked to change that kind of on the fly? Like, what say you?
I think there are two big things when it comes to dealing with change. The first one is like, don't try to master the whole thing all at once. Master what's manageable and what's going to have the greatest impact. So I think in the case of like the shift from, God, the echo is bad. Um, in the case of the shift from Google Classroom to Canvas, think about like the biggest thing is how you get your lessons to your students. And so start from that place, like explore the different options of how you can deliver information. Like you can create a page, you can create a whole module, and focus on that most important part and don't try to get overly fancy. Because I think even when I feel like this even applies when I'm writing code. Like if I'm writing code, I start out with like just get it functioning and then go back and worry about making it pretty. So I think the same thing would apply in this case. The second piece of advice I would give is um, for yourself, like accept the fact that it's gonna suck because it's a thing that you didn't know about that you're learning about. Because I think as adults, we tend to forget what it's like to be a beginner at a thing. So like when I switched careers, I went from having a decade plus of experience in a field and knowing all the ins and outs of that to this field where I really didn't know anything. I mean, I knew a little bit, but it was like by comparison, it was basically nothing. And so I had to get really comfortable with the struggle that comes with being new to something again, the frustration and knowing when to stop when I'm like overly frustrated. So I think giving yourself some leeway to recognize those moments and stop, and to know that you're not going to be an expert overnight, and not let that shade your feelings toward the tool. Because I know a lot of people that don't like Canvas because it feels overly complicated. I saw a thread last week where people were like, "Oh, I can't believe we have to switch to Canvas. Google's so much better." I think Google has its merits because it is a program designed by a tech company that has experienced designers and quality analysts and all that kind of thing. But it's also reflective of that there aren't teachers or educators involved in the process of creating that tool, because it's essentially like a stream of information like social media is. It's not the way that Canvas is structured where you can go through it asynchronously and that kind of a thing. So I would say be careful not to let the fact that this is a new tool and that it is a very powerful tool with a lot of features overwhelm you and make you feel like it's a garbage tool because it makes you frustrated.
That's good advice. That's good advice. So, like, how often do you have to change stuff in your career now? Like, how often are things? How much entropy are you dealing with on a regular basis?
Oh my God, it's almost daily. Things that can shift include customer priorities, team priorities. We can come in one day and there's been a new release of a tool that we use and it breaks a bunch of things. And we have to figure out, is that the reason it's broken? Should we freeze the version? Should we roll back? We're constantly, that whole awful phrase, building the plane while you fly it. I mean, that is software development. Like there is a tool out in the wild that we have to support that is also getting new features all the time. So it's always a constantly in motion type thing. There is so much entropy in the system. It's like that's the norm, is just chaos. I mean, it's like controlled chaos. It's not like completely blown up. But I think there's a lot more entropy in the system when it comes to software development than a lot of other fields. There are a lot of other fields where things can stay the same, like education. Things can kind of stay the same for decades and decades on end, and software is always updating, always changing. So you have to be able to pivot and adjust. And even especially with like client requests or demands or priorities, those can shift. Like in my current project, we've had priority A come up and then priority B replaced priority A and then priority A came back again. So that is not an uncommon situation. And you have to be able to pivot and adjust. I mean, that's part of why we use what's called agile framework so that we can make those adjustments on the fly. In waterfall, it's like, no, we're going to invest, like this is the product we're building. We're going to build that product. And then when we get to the end, we're going to give you that product. And if things have changed in the meantime and there's no more demand for that product anymore, too bad, so sad, I guess.
Interesting. Interesting. So, with that kind of as our, I guess our north star here, change is something that happens. It sucks a lot of times, but there are ways that we can take the things you've already built and salvage them, so that we can not throw away the baby with the bathwater. Use those same things in a different form and a different with different ideas in terms of moving things over to Canvas. So, uh, first topic here, Webs. Why would we want to change from Google Classroom to Canvas in the first place? So there is I don't know, a sentiment perhaps in which, hey, these products are equivalent. They do the same thing. They will essentially give me and my learners the same opportunity to do things. Why would we want to perhaps move from Google Classroom to Canvas? What are the pros and cons?
I mean, the way that I see it, like I said, Google Classroom isn't a terrible product. It's a perfectly acceptable, starter product. But it doesn't have it's a education tool designed by, where Canvas feels like a tech tool designed by an education company. So it feels more like education is at the forefront when it comes to Canvas, while maybe not necessarily for the younger folks. Like it might actually take some adaptation for that. It's more designed for like, the older kids or whatever. But like, it's still a really powerful tool that can be used with those younger kids. And Google Classroom, again, is not bad, but the ability to structure content so that it's asynchronous and accessible is a lot easier, I think, in Canvas than it is in Google Classroom. Like I said, Google Classroom is basically you dump to the stream and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you in that extent. Just as someone who's both used both Canvas and Google Classroom, right? Um, Google Classroom is your starter house, right? It's the one that, hey, you've got 0 kids and you and your sweetheart move into this place that's 900 square feet. And you're like, oh, yeah, this is amazing. We have our first place. And, love is in the air and we don't mind being cramped up in this space. But then like kid number one shows up and you're like, oh my god, like this place is small and it doesn't fit all our needs anymore. You end up on house hunters and stuff because you need to upgrade the house. Right? So
I
I
need a
think
more open layout.
exactly. So I think Canvas is the I need more space, right? I need everyone needs to be able to function in the house without bumping into one another. And Google Classroom, again, like you said before, it's not a bad product. It's just a product that is, I think, the one's initial foray into learning management systems. I do have some serious reservations in terms of if you have kids that show up in the middle of the school year, if you have kids who have been sick on an extended break, if you have kids who just forgot to do assignments during the day, it is very difficult to ensure that those students are going to be able to make that content up without having, as a teacher, to explain to them what happened. And so I do think that Google Classroom, again, while it does have its merits, the evolution into Canvas, I think, is a necessary one if we're talking about helping students be self advocates, be as we move this journey to competency based learning, and kind of the elimination of the idea of I was sick, right? I was sick is not going to be something that flies in Canvas because so what, you were sick, you could have done that at any point. Miss Jones can build all your content. You just walk through it at whatever pace you would like. Google Classroom, you can do that. It just takes a heck of a lot more work than Canvas because Canvas kind of has that as a default, right? So, any other things you can think about that like what would spur someone to say, "Hey, perhaps we need to make this jump"?
Um, I feel like you get a few more perks with Canvas that you don't get with Google Classroom. So like immersive reader, I think comes by default. So you have this ability. It does not come by default on Canvas.
So it comes if so the interesting flavor with Canvas is every district can design Canvas the way they would like it to be designed. So if you go to Instructure right now and like log into Canvas and see like the basic shell like we're going to show you in a few minutes, there is no immersive reader. There is no like these sexy features that you might see that CCSD has. Those don't come by default. So custom jobs. I was speaking to a teacher not too long ago. She's in a different district, and I was referring to her to, oh yeah, you should have X Y Z. She's like, nah, it's not there. I'm like, word? She's like, nah.
That's disappointing.
So,
well, if you're a CCSD person, you have immersive reader, which Google does not have. So that's kind of nice. I think the biggest thing for me is structure. Like what other things would you add? Because like I said, with Google, it's you're basically dumping to a social media feed. And so going back through and trying to find that information is really difficult. You also can't add you can add another teacher, but not in any specific role. You can't add somebody to just like view your course or give you feedback or something. So I feel like Canvas is a bit more mature than Google Classroom is. You have some flexibility with like mastery paths, I feel like is a thing. Again, I don't know feature wise if that's something that has to be flicked on or off. I'm pretty sure that's in the default one because I do have an account there. The mastery paths is something that I think is huge if you get to a level of an advanced enough level where you're using it that Google Classroom doesn't have, because then you have this ability to differentiate effortlessly. And while Canvas may require a bit more work up front, I feel like Canvas is also a lot more recyclable is the best way I can really put it. So like from year to year, it would be a lot easier to tweak your Canvas content and copy a course than it would to do the same with Google.
I'd agree. I mean,
But what are your thoughts? You're in it every day, far more like, yeah, you're in it every day. I am not. So
the I mean the Google Classroom thing again. The structure of Google Classroom kind of is less intimidating, right? So if you have never done this before, you're going to look at it and say, "Oh my God, yeah, this is this works. I understand this. These are the places that things go." I think again, as you alluded to before, the Canvas thing is open, right? There's some stuff there, but it's a blank page of sheet of paper, and you have to design it and move things around. So I think that one of the perks of not having a defined space is that you're forced to take and learn design principles. And I think that is, as we kind of alluded to last week, I don't think, and I don't consider myself a teacher anymore, right? I don't think that's a job anymore. I think that you are an artist, an architect, a designer. You're somebody whose job is to facilitate this learning path rather than having to instruct students on things that they could Google or watch on YouTube whenever they want. Like our job is to make the learning as attractive as possible.
I think that's one of the pitfalls that a lot of folks will probably encounter is that if you try to approach Canvas with the same mentality as Google Classroom or even the same mentality as like in person learning, it's going to be frustrating for both you and your students very quickly. Because I remember at the beginning of the year, I saw teacher, we had talked about this, like teachers making buttons for their Canvas courses for every day of the week. And or like charts or tables that had like lessons for every date. And I did the math on that and I'm like, okay, are you going to do 180 of those? Like, that's not scalable to revisit our conversation from Thursday. That you have to be very considerate of like, is this scalable? And that approach is not scalable. Like, you need something that you're thinking more in terms of units without time, I feel like is the best way to explain it. So you're designing a unit that may last 6 weeks, but where those 6 weeks in the year are doesn't matter really. You can sequence things in relation to one another, but the actual like time of the year that it's happening really shouldn't matter. But I feel like that also brings into question like what does that mean for education as a whole? Like the whole reason we were always on this time crunch was you could only see your students from 7-11 to 2:26 every day, Monday through Friday, from August to May or June. Now those boundaries aren't really there anymore.
Well,
If education were to change.
yeah, that's not gonna happen. But ideally, like again,
Wah wah,
the
sad trombone.
yeah the idea of time now is like relative. Like if I get up at 9:30 p.m. and my work is still there, and I decide I'm going to do an extra assignment for Miss Jones at 9:30, nothing should stop me from being able to do that. Right? I think the fallacy has always been that the only learning that happens in school. Like that's just stupid. But again, I think that the Google Class, even with Google Classroom with my students, you'll see dings on my phone 11 p.m., 11:30 p.m., midnight, 12:30, and these are elementary school students doing assignments in Google Classroom that late at night. So people out there, a heck of a lot of kids, at least in my school, that are like me that stay up until 2 or 3 in the morning doing stuff and farting around or whatever. They decide, hey, I'm going to do this assignment, get it done. Um, I just really think that it requires a shift. And even though I don't necessarily agree with how this tool was rolled out, I do think this is the right tool for the right time. In that you're going to have a decrease in stress overall for educators who embrace this and say, I can build this course up. I can build it, and then I just have to maintain the infrastructure of my course every year rather than, oh my God, I now have to make lesson plans every year and I'm trying to throw stuff in Google Classroom and I got new kids and et cetera, et cetera. This is really in the long term going to save people. I would predict educators who embrace Canvas are going to add 2, 3, 4, 5 years to their careers when they might have been suffering burnout and decided to go career change. This is really going to alleviate a lot of the frustration, I guess, with having to lesson plan daily, weekly, however you're lesson plan it, but also with RTI, because you'll be able to see in real time these are students that need my help, and I have every other student working individually on their own work. Let me bring these 5 students who I've noticed have an issue with this particular standard, this particular way of doing things, bring them to my kidney table, and I can avoid and prevent issues before they have that time to fester. And the kid only got that one time to see that tier 1 lesson in the past. Now they can watch that video over and over and over and over and over again. I can set a mastery path that loops them back into another remedial situation. There's a lot of really, really cool things that can happen that Google Classroom, while you could do them in some kind of Frankenstein way, it's not built to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually thinking about um, the repetitiveness you were just talking about, the ability to go back and revisit a lesson over and over again, to be able to revisit that lesson with a parent sitting next to you. So if the parent has a question, or the grown up, whoever your grown up is, has a question, wants to understand a lesson better, that grown up has the option to go back and rewatch that lesson. When I was teaching myself software development, there is what I learned it all online, right? So it is possible to learn things online. And a lot of times that's what I would do. Like if I didn't understand a concept, I'd scroll it back, replay it, or I'd get halfway through a video, realize that I couldn't remember anything that I heard, go back, replay it. Sometimes I'd just need a refresher. So I'd go back, replay it. Like that ability to revisit information and content over and over again is something that you cannot really replicate in the face-to-face classroom, or if you're only doing real-time lessons, you don't have that option.
Facts. And you're seeing the rise of this mentality, right? You got Coursera, you got Udemy, you got the LinkedIn with the Linda, you got the masterclass deal. You got all these things are saying learn at your own pace. Once you buy the course, you bought it for life. You can watch it when you want to watch it, when you got time in between things. Like, why are we not moving toward that kind of scenario? I think Canvas helps you move to that kind of scenario. Um, Especially given the fact that if you're an elementary school teacher, there is no real end of semester, right? You have the entire school year to get to all of your standards. I can see maybe in secondary school where you got, in order to get things accomplished, you got to get them all done in a semester. But if I'm teaching 3rd grade, bro, you got until the end of the school year to get all your stuff done. Like, why do I, as teacher, have to stand in front and give this like 50-minute speech about some stuff when you could just watch me on the machine doing the same thing?
I'm going to make the case that Canvas is actually better for younger kids than Google Classroom is.
Why so?
And this is why. Because thinking about that, the thing I was just talking about, where when I was learning software development, I would watch a video, go back, rewatch it. It also presented it to me in a very linear fashion. It would play a video, I'd take a little quiz, I'd do an activity, it'd play a video, I'd take a quiz, I'd do an activity. You cannot do that in Google Classroom. It doesn't have the ability to have that super linear, like you'd have to really like be a creative person, I feel like, to get that kind of structure. You'd have to embed it in a slide deck or something along those lines to get that kind of linear structure. Canvas offers that structure on a page via a module. You can control these gates of what direction you want to guide students in. If you want to create your own differentiation, you have the ability to adjust by the way you lock certain things off. You just don't have that level of ease. I think it's easy flexibility once you learn how the tool works.
Facts. I would definitely agree with that. I think that 150% is the truth. I think that Google Classroom, if you were to use Wiser or Nearpod or something like that, could you build that same thing? Yeah, you would need a third party tool in order to do that. But I think Canvas, because it also will use Nearpod and Wiser, again, gives it that extra, like, once you get really good here, you're not going to have a problem. And again, the fact that essentially if you build it once and it works, all it is maintenance. Like, there's no recreation of the wheel. I just finished, or currently right now, my PDE course is up. and I just went through and changed a couple videos out, updated some things. I'll update a little bit more once this course is done, but the bones of the course function the way that they're supposed to. So definitely agree.
I think the important shift there, though, is a shift of perspective on how you're designing content. Because I think if you're still trying to design in that I meet you face to face in real time every day type mentality, it's not going to work and it's going to be really frustrating. So I think that's like the biggest kind of mindset shift folks have to make going from Google Classroom to Canvas. Because I can see the appeal of Google Classroom if you're doing a real time thing where like a stream makes sense then, right? If you're doing this, I meet with my students, here's the assignment. If you missed it, too bad, we're moving on. If that's still your mentality, then yeah, Google Classroom's going to fit that a lot better. But if you can shift to that mentality of asynchronous learning, students can go at their own pace, you're creating content that's relative to the content and not set to, has to be done in weeks 1 and 2 of March, then you'll find success. But I think if you're still in that, real time, day to day mentality, then it's going to be frustrating.
Facts, facts. All right, let's go to topic 2. Um, Google Drive. How can we use Google Drive to kind of help this movement toward Google Classroom to Canvas? And like just to kind of start us off here, every time you build something in your Google Classroom, you get an asset, or especially when kids turn in assignments, you post something, whatever. So there's an asset inside of your Google Drive folder that is created. It is a folder just called Classroom, and we're gonna just show people that right now. Oops, that's not what I want. Oops, that's not what I want either. Showing you my back end. There we go. All right. So in terms of how everything works here, oh my gosh, the screen share is not there. Hold on, let me bring it back, Webs. Thought I screen shared all.
I was gonna say I don't see anything.
Yeah, you shouldn't see anything because I didn't set up right. Because I'm about to say Mr. Lang. Sometimes I'm special. Is it that one? Still not there. All right, that's
Still not there. There we go.
Right,
I see Google Drive, Google Slides, Canvas.
All right, here we go. So, in terms of the hustle here, inside of your Google Drive, it's there. You will see that there is a classroom tab there, and it will show you all the Google Classrooms you're responsible for. And when you drill down, this is just demo classes. So when you drill down, all of your stuff will be inside here. So if you added any ideas for Google Drive, et cetera, you'll see them. The other thing is if you just build in Google Drive, so a lot of teachers use slides and docs and all that kind of wonderful stuff, you have copies of those things inside here as well. So you don't necessarily have to go from a scenario where, oh my God, I now have to go get rid of all my stuff in Google Classroom. You can definitely utilize those things. So say I'm going to use a slide deck really quickly. Cool. So I've got a slide deck here. Wonderful. I want the kids to learn how to do haiku. So it's just a basic little slide deck here. Wonderful. I want this slide deck inside of my Canvas course. It is simply as easy as either File, Publish to Web, Embed it, determining the size that I want my device to be, or my slide deck to be. I'm going to say every minute. That's going to give kids the optimal time to do what they need to do. I tend to like to restart at the end there. Hit the publisher button. Sure you want to publish this? Yep, I'm sure. I'm going to get my HTML goodness there. And I'm going to copy that. When I copy that, I'm going right to this is Canvas here. So it's just basically how to add things here. So I'm going to come here. Oops, move that over so I can actually see stuff. Edit. All right, so this is the free version of the product. This is not what your CCSD is going to look like. This is the free version. If I just took it and I decided to create my own account, and I did this purposely to show again all of there's some difference in how all of the Canvas courses look. So if you notice here, basically everything that's here looks like CCSD, but you will see that there is no immersive reader here. There is no Nearpod integration and all that wonderful stuff here. All right. But if you just wanted to get started, to add HTML or embeds on any page, and this is going to be your Google Slides, your Google Forms, your Google Docs, your Google Sheets, all that wonderful stuff. Click there, tap my code inside there, and submit. And then my Google Slideshow is there. Now, okay, we go further and do some like fancy dancy editing of this page and make it look really pretty. Yep. But Webb said something that was very important at the beginning of the show. She said, "Yo, we're trying to make sure it works. We ain't trying to make sure it looks like, the Mona Lisa right now. Throw the crap on the page right now, and as your skills advance, you can go and make things look different and move things around or whatever. But right now, that is a functional thing on a page. 1, 2, 3.
Also, it's a recipe for frustration if you try to do the visual like element of it at the same time as the like structural element of it. In fact, web pages are built that way, right? HTML is really meant just for structure. CSS is what makes it look pretty. It's two completely separate things, and I feel like it should be two completely separate processes. Just get all the information on the page, then go back and make it look pretty.
Facts.
Function, form, aesthetic.
Facts. Which kind of jumped the gun. So before even that, and this is something that we stressed in our Saturday class. If you were somebody who was a part of our Saturday class, you know this. One of the things that really frustrated people when we first started the class, I think, was that we did not start with Canvas. Like we did not touch Canvas at all, because to me, in order to be a very good user of Canvas is not the real beast to tackle, right? It's a shift in mentality that first has to happen. And so one of the things that we did very much encourage people to do is first think about what you're trying to teach, right? You probably have lesson plans, long range plans, things like that, right? How do you break those things into the elements that you need kids to learn? So what are your content objectives or your language objectives? What standards you're going to deal with? All that wonderful stuff. And then come to Canvas and build modules. So we're just going to pretend for today. So let's say moving to Google Classroom. Moving from Google Classroom. Now, prerequisites right now, a prerequisite would be any module that exists before it. I'm not going to add any prerequisites at all. All right. You can lock this. This is again one of those situations where you have kids go at their own pace, but I can stop you from going at your own pace as well. If I say, okay, you're going to have 4 weeks. For 4 weeks, we're going to stay on this module, and after that, again, I can add a prerequisites. The previous module, I'm going to unlock 4 weeks after school started or whatever. So I say it's going to open on the 26th. Great. So that gives the kids the preseason module plenty of time to get through that module. We can add discussions, etc. And then any kid that needs to go up, if it's February the 26th, okay, you can start February the 26th on this module. That's one way you can do it. All right, great. So
I think something to consider too that you've mentioned many times is thinking of it from the perspective of like a video game. So kids will sit in front of video games and try things over and over and over and over and over again. And if you design it in such a way that they have that ability and there's an incentive to do so, which is a little bit more of an advanced topic, but there's an incentive to do so, then they're going to go back and review that content. And that's really what you want them to do. You want them to go back and practice over and over again until they master that skill. It should be a mastery driven like experience. So like locking certain content until a certain time. And that's even like a video game thing, right? Like video games now have seasons where you can only do certain things at certain times. They do the same thing for like the Apple Watch challenges. You can only get certain rewards in certain months, or certain days by doing certain things. Like same concept.
Facts. And so also looking at the situation here, the structure of your course is going to determine a lot of what content you add there, what content you don't add there, and like that. Are you working in sequential order? And so one of the things we're very much asking people to do, one of the things that we kind of talking to some of our participants through is, what's the pattern of this module going to be? Are you always going to do a situation where there's going to be going back to video games? There are patterns to beat the bosses. Once you find the pattern, you can beat the boss. But if there's an indiscriminate pattern, the guy doesn't jump twice before he swings or whatever, it's very difficult to find a way to actually power through that situation. So one of the things that we have kind of encouraged people to do, excuse me, is always start with an introduction of the topic and making that an introduction page. Great, I'm going to talk about fractions or whatever I'm going to talk about. Hey, why Google Classroom is something that we want to leave or whatever. Then,
and in that respect, I don't think that's any different than any normal lesson planning, right? You say up front, this is what our objective is. This is what you should be able to accomplish by the end of the lesson. Like, that's not a new thing. It's just being explicit about stating it up front as part of an introduction versus calling it something else.
Facts. And then it's the Tom Selleck rule for me, right? It's the Magnum PI. Your module should either be 3 pages, 5 pages, or 7 pages. All right, those are the holy numbers when it comes down to it, right? They're odd. They're gonna give you ability to. In my mind, I always start with a introduction and I end with a summary of some sort. That kind of, again, what Webb's is kind of mentioning. Hey, which introduction? What I guarantee you're going to be learning through the situation. Summary: you should have learned through this course these things. Now, if you don't learn them, then me and you need to have a conversation about some stuff. But those two things, to me, those are the bookends of your module. And if the kids got into a pattern where I know I always start with an introduction, and I know I'm always going to end with a summary, that predictability gives kids some hope, right? It lets me know I'm going to start this. We're going to, there's one assessment or assignment or whatever I'm going to do, and then suddenly I'm going to go back to the end of the assignment. It's going to tell me what I should have learned and whatnot. If I had beef, I can go to the kidney table and talk to Miss Jones again.
Also, predictability is something that our brains absolutely love. It's the reason we watch the same shows over and over again. It's the reason you can tell right away who the bad guy is in, SVU, Law and Order. It is, and by the way, it's always the second most famous guest star that's on the show. Sometimes it's the most famous guest star, but it's always the guest star on the show that's usually the bad guy. Our brains love that. Like, if you think about kids shows are very predictable about how long each like little inner episode is. I'm thinking about shows like SpongeBob, or back in the day, Bobby's World. I don't know why that came to mind, but it has like a pattern to it. The same way stories have a pattern. We have what is it? Something, rising action, climax, the declining action, conclusion, denouement, like all those little pieces, like same concept. And I'm pretty sure that even goes in like a 5 or a 7 pattern, doesn't it?
I believe it's 7. But yeah, that's the hero's journey, right?
Hero's journey, right? That's a great example.
So I would bookend it, introduction, summary, and then what you put, the meat and cheese and all that wonderful stuff, to me is up to you. All right, and there's tons of different page types here. Discussion. I always make sure there's a discussion question inside there, even if it's something I'm not going to grade, just so kids have an opportunity to talk to other kids. The external tools, we're going to talk at the end, and we're going to speed this up a little bit. We're going to talk about the external URL and external tools at the end here. But the assignments and the quizzes. So you can do your assessment inside here. You can do your assignments inside here as well. So if you got a bigger project for students to do, you can put both of those inside there with no problems. I, again, go either 3, 5, or 7 pages inside of a module and allow kids to self-regulate. The other thing is with pages, like any good meal, you don't want too much on a page. Like, you don't want a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be intimidating or sloppy or bleeding to one another. But go ahead, Webbs.
Oh, I think that is another big, huge shift from in-person teaching to online teaching. There is a certain element of you have to be a web page designer, right? You don't want to have too much on the page. If you make it too text heavy, it's going to be overwhelming. You want to stick to the rules of E or F. So when you're looking at things on a page, it should go pretty linearly down the left side of the page. The important buttons are along the top. Maybe you have the second most important things in the middle, and then there's important things down at the bottom. So it either is shaped like an F if you don't have the bottom part, or an E if you do have the bottom part. And visually, that's what you want to look for.
All right. So say you don't want to do the embeds because like the embeds are not something that you're dealing with. You can also simply share this deal. Remember, your kids are still going to have access to all of the other Google tools. So it's not a scenario in which all the other Google tools are going away. Your kids will still have access to Docs and the Drive and all that wonderful stuff. So right now, I'm
What do
going
you think? This was a question that one of my friends asked me. What do you think is the best way to integrate Google with Canvas? Like this suite.
okay. I'm probably not the best person to ask about that because I don't see the necessity of Google Docs at all. Like I don't see what the big apps is for Google Docs. I think it's a kind of if you're an older person, perhaps Google Docs is this thing. It takes far. You're talking about a lot of work to design some stuff that other tools let you design and make attractive very quickly. Slides, if you were talking about integrating slides is probably the of all of the tools. This is the one that's the one I would gravitate to because it's a slide that and it's pretty. Go ahead.
Why is that? Yeah. Why slides over? I mean, I know why you're picking slides over docs, but for the audience, like also if anybody's watching wants to throw a question in the chat, like please feel free. If you want to throw your the fact that you think our opinions are garbage, like knock yourself out. We'd love to hear from folks as far as like what your concerns are, what your thoughts are, what are the features that you're afraid of losing. Any of your questions, just throw those in the chat. So I know why you're picking slides because I have the same like opinion, but for the audience, what is it like about slides over docs that you prefer?
Slides does everything Docs does. Docs doesn't do everything that Slides does. And so
Okay.
Slides allows you to more easily um, craft something that's beautiful, that still gives you the ability if you want to type on it, you can still type on it. Um, Doc's just very difficult to work with, especially if you're talking about younger kids. Now, if you're talking about some like simple, I just want something ugly and I just want the kids to type on it, yep, Docs will do that deal for you very, very quickly.
So like I'm writing an essay.
Yes, you want to write an essay, fine. But you could write an essay in Slides as well. Add the graphics a lot easier. Um, be able to make it more of a movie-like scenario. Like there's a lot of options in Google Slides that again you will not get in Google Drive.
That's interesting. I would challenge folks out there to not have their students write a single essay without images for the entire school year. Because I feel like there is, we were talking about this earlier. I feel like there is actually almost more of a challenge in being concise and in getting your ideas across using images than using words. And maybe some of that comes from like, I'm an adult, I've been writing for a long time, but I think there is an added layer of challenge to including images in some way. And I think for some reason we frown upon that. Like it's like an out if you include images, but I think that's a very important like way of communicating. You lots of websites, the best websites rely heavily on images to get ideas across. So why would you not want students to have that ability to pair text with images?
What else?
And yeah, I agree. You can do that as well in
And
pages.
speaking of, all right. So if I go to my search box here, look
Why
at
did you
kind of
build this in pages?
but to give people like so sometimes your audience wants stuff so you're like hey fam I'm gonna build this on the Google Doc even though this is not something I would ever use but if you look here right look at the options I have here. I've got image
Mm-hmm.
but look at kind of the whack places I can get images right. Wonderful. Now this is Slides. I can insert video and audio here right. So in terms of the right brain person that wants to go and do creative stuff, I still wouldn't build things generally in Google Slides. There are other tools that I would use. But if I was like forced to tie my hands behind my back and said, choose one of these tools in order to build stuff with, it would be Google Slides because, again, all this I can do. I could type on here if I wanted to. That's exactly what Google Docs is, just typing, right? So I can type here
Mm-hmm.
if I would like. I could build a table of contents slide on Google Slides. I could link to the different pages if I wanted to, but I can put YouTube videos here. I can add audio here. I can do a lot more creative work with the Google Slide Deck program than I could do with Google Docs. and a lot easier. Now, are there ways to bring audio and video into Google Docs? Of course, you could link them to YouTube video on YouTube, but this I can watch the YouTube video directly in the product without having to do all that. So
I'd say too, from an accessibility standpoint, if you have a student who is struggling with typing, they can record audio instead. If you have a student who did make a really awesome video or makes a connection, right? We talk about those connections, self to world, self to text, that kind of a thing. Like, you're going to be able to do that a lot easier from a slide deck than you will be from a document.
and so the thing that I was going to try to get to here really quickly is, since if you're a CCSD student, a teacher, your students still have access to the entire suite. The only thing that will be turned off is Google Classroom. So everything else is there. So that get link place here, if you said get link and you only made it accessible to just your students or just anybody in CCSD, this would work. You would copy the link here, you would go to your drive, and you could paste it inside there as one deal. The other thing over here on the left-hand side, you're going to have your Google Drive assets built into your Canvas instance inside of CCSD. So you'll be able to access those things. Your kids also be able to access. All they need to do is connect their drives, which is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, happens instantaneously. But we used to have to like manually connect your Google Drive with Canvas, but it's possible. So you're not losing the functionality of Google. You're just losing access to Google Classroom en masse. Whether you'll have access to the actual assets in your Google Classroom, just not to be able to create new classrooms and add students, I have no idea like what that turnoff means. But if I were you, I would start to prepare, going to your Google Drive, getting your folders ready, and adding all your assets that may be loose or part of your Google Classroom into your units and things, so that when it's time to come to Google Classroom, you're not going to have come to Canvas rather. You're not going to have a huge difficult shift that way. Webbs, anything else to add?
No, I'm good.
All right, cool. So that was either the first kind of idea. The second idea that could be done, I think, really easy here is the idea of the idea of Google Sites, right? So shifting away from Google Classroom to Google Sites, it's not as intimidating as you might think. It's if you can build a Google slide deck, you can build a Google site. You could build one big site for your entire class. You could build one site for per unit. You could do a number of those things. So let's kind of look at it really, really quickly. And again, why are you doing this? There we go. All right.
Everything is against us today. Good grief.
Facts. So here is I'm going to use this one. All right. So this is a website I built to do blackout poetry and all kind of other kind of poetry month that's coming up. And it's a poem. If you're a hip hop fan, 21 Savage, his whole it's a knife situation. I kind of put a play on that. But all I did was build the pages in here and looked at the Jizza. This is one of the dopest. Brian, he kind of disappointed me with his anti-vaccination situation, but it is what it is.
Oh.
This was, the Jizza, the Spark. NASA actually went to the Jizza and was like, look, fam, write us a rap about how the universe was created. And this is his song about the Big Bang, which is really dope. But anyway, bringing in tools and resources, all this kind of stuff. You could go and put your YouTube videos in here, all that wonderful stuff inside here. All right. No worries. Now, one of the
no way. I can't make something this fancy.
What do you mean?
Because it looks so fancy. How could I make that?
Just take Google Slides and so this is the underbelly of it. All right. So we've got buttons, you got YouTube, you got all that kind of stuff. You got anything from your Google Drive. All those things are already built for you. You don't have to really think outside the box. You can use your slides, your docs, all that stuff you already made for your Google Classroom. Just transfer it over here, and suddenly, again, we're not looking at it to be beautiful initially. Just get your unit set up. And the cool thing about the scenario is you can link. So I'm going to go ahead and chill this. So say I did this, and this is the other thing that we have to make sure that people remember. I can link assignments from one place to another, and one place to another, and one place to another, as long as people have accounts. So as long as I'm enrolled in a course, it's still going to give me the ability to go back and forth between the two links. I may have to log back into Canvas, but it is what it is. Like, if you just were uncomfortable with Canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and go to modules here. Yeah.
I feel like this is a solid like stopgap that's very accessible. So if you're still working on how to get caught up on using Canvas, you could build everything in Google Sites and then just like link to the Google site and have them work off of Google Sites, except for the assignments because you'd need that for your grade book.
So it's an assignment. All right, cool. That's that. I'm going to click on it. And you will notice that up here at the top, I do have some information in my URL bar. That's the thing that's going to point directly to this assignment. Yep, it's there. Wonderful. I fill all this information out. I put my rubric in there or whatever, and I copy that. Oops, didn't want to do that. Once I copy it, I come here, I go to a page. All right, my text box. It's your assignment. I highlight it. I insert the link. What do I want to link to? I want to link to that. Apply. Wonderful. Now, as long as the kid was actually in your Canvas course, that'll work like nothing else. It'll be no problems. Great. I can use Canvas by simply having kids turn their information in on Canvas rather than me having to learn how to use Canvas. So not only a stopgap, that's like a circumvention of what they wanted you to do. I'm using Canvas, yes, but I'm using Google Sites as my main mode of instruction. So again, if you're somebody who's a Google person, this is going to come like second nature to you. You're going to have a problem at all. What say you, Webbs?
Yeah, I agree. Like I think that Canvas is still going to have a lot more powerful tools, but it is definitely a circumvention or a stopgap if it's too much to try and learn Canvas on top of everything else.
All right, so that's how we can use Google Classroom and Canvas. The last topic for tonight is other ideas. And in terms of other ideas, Webbs, do you have any other ideas off the top of your head? Like, hey, yo, what other things could you perhaps use that would help you circumvent the hustle?
I mean, we mentioned this earlier, but like, what's the thing I'm thinking of? Big long sheet. You can embed anything into it.
Wiser.
Yes, like Wiser would work. Build everything in Wiser and just embed or link in Canvas in a page. That would do it.
Big facts. The other thing is this, and I'm going to walk you through this very quickly. Now, one of the things that, if you want to just not cause yourself a lot of stress, you could say this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that. Give me a second. Remove. I'm going to get rid of that. Remove. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click there and I'm going to say every last of one of my modules only have 3 components: an introduction, an assignment, and a summary. I'm going to keep it really, really tight. I'm not going to go in, I'm not going to expedite anything. So I'm going to say, okay, cool. Assignment thing. Now, bada bing. Now, the cool thing about this would be, first of all, it's not going to be as intimidating to try to figure out like multiple pages and stuff. Second of all of the pages essentially are the same, all right, in terms of how you can add information to them. So if you're going to notice the pages here, I'm going to go to that edit button at the very top right-hand corner. And cool, it has assignments and stuff like this. I'm not worried about this right now. What I'm worried about is up here. Now, this is going to be the same. This interface is going to be the same on any and every page, even the discussion pages outside of the external URLs and stuff like that. But the pages in which I can actually input information, all of these are going to be the same. So essentially, I can teach my entire class on this one page. I could go and say, here's my Nearpod thing that I want the kids to do. Wonderful. I'm going to go and do the build a Nearpod that's going to do all my direct instruction for me, and then the kid's going to have an assignment to deal with. So let me see if I I got anything in the one that I have for the hoodlums. I don't think I built anything in here, but we can figure it out. Nos podemos, as my Spanish homies say. Yes, I'm 13 years old, or I was. All right, cool. So this is just some garbage I threw inside here. So,
If you're 13 years old,
I mean, hey.
you look like a very old 13-year-old.
Thank you for hurting my feelings, Well, I appreciate that. So, I go student pace, and when I get the student pace, that's social. Not the social. The embed is what I want. Great, small, medium, large. Doesn't matter. You choose what you want. I'm going to go medium there and copy that. As soon as I copy it, again, I'm pretending this is my lesson that I've taught forever. The other thing I usually do is I say, don't want to do that. I'm going to say like that. So that gives kids, that's 100 days, 98 days, get your stuff done. I'm going to copy that. I'm going right on back to my assignment. Before I do that, I'm going to say, ladies and gents, today you're designing a rocket ship. First, do the near pod, then do a handstand, then kiss
Great. Now you're getting them injured.
frogs, and then upload your blueprint. All right, cool. Now I can add videos to this thing, near pods, whatever. I'm gonna click that embed deal. Boom, boom. Oh. Sometimes you really irritate me. That was really not nice, Canvas people. Why are you doing that? And why won't you let me copy? Really? Copy. Okay. This is literally not letting me copy that.
It's not working with the keyboard shortcut?
There you go.
There it goes. When in doubt, use the keyboard shortcut.
Indeed. So, it's going to pop up there. I could add a YouTube video underneath there. I could put all of the tasks right here on this one page, including their assignment. This is going to be worth 50 points. It's going to go in assignment. It's going to display everything as points. I'm going to give them the ability to do it online. They can put a website URL. They can upload all those things. They want to type it. They can do that. I'm going to give them as many attempts as they would like. This is not a group assignment. I'm going to let their buddies, I'm going to let this automatically deal with it so that one peer review is going to be necessary as they go through and assign the reviews on, this is on the 28th, whatever. All right, and let them appear anonymously. I don't want them to have any, throwing, boogers at anybody or anything in there. All right, cool. I don't want them to see the students' names. It's anonymous stuff that's going on there. Everyone's going to get it.
Ooh, that's an interesting feature.
Just keeping people safe.
So I just get somebody's work, I don't know whose it is, and I have to give feedback on it.
Yep.
So it's like, even if you have like rivalries or something, they're not going to know whose paper they have. They just have to give feedback. That's really fascinating.
Also, you have to definitely tell kids, don't tell anybody whose paper you're looking at, genius. Pretty please with sugar on top. All right,
interesting. Cool. Wait, so do they but if it's anonymous, they get to see the kid's paper they're reviewing?
No, they don't. They just get to see the paper. Sometimes you have some super sleuths that I know. If you I know who this is because they showed it to me before they did X, Y, and Z. You got so and so's paper.
Yeah.
Or
it talks about Pokemon, and I know that Jordan just got a new Pokemon game and blah blah blah.
Yeah. So sleuths are.
And then they should get points for making inferences.
So you could build your entire lesson right as an assignment and not have to deal with anything else. Like if you could put your YouTube video and this and that in there. So that's one way.
BT dubs, if you haven't picked this up, the embed code is like your best friend.
All facts. Most definitely. So you have that deal. The other thing that I would really look in is Satori. And it builds itself as a social studies tool. I do not use it for social studies at all. I use this for my kindergarten and first grade friends on a regular basis. Because all right, cool. It's very linear, extremely linear. So great. Boom, I put the pictures in there. The kids know what they need to do. All right, I don't need to have a lot of text on there whatsoever. I've got the video for their with the little story they're gonna read that was there. I got a video that I did that shows them how to do everything, and then I've got screenshots of this is the process that you need to do. The cool thing about Satori is it is so intuitive. You can add text, links, multiple choice questions inside here, matching quizzes, a did you know question, a forum for discussion, bibliographies, files, audios, video, all that stuff built into the tool by itself. Is there a cost? Yep, it's like 35 bucks for the year. This is one of the tools that if I were you, I would go to your administration and say, hey, this is one that I would definitely want to be able to deal with. Why else would I like it? Because when I click there, that embed code is there. So one more again, I can build it in Satori. I can start moving my Google assets over into Satori's that really after the introduction and everything there, I keep everything in one page. Hit that make public bucket and rock and roll. It also has a Clever app, so you can upload all your students via Clever into Satori if you have it, which is also very, very cool. All right, so Satori is another one I would deal with. Same deal, like Webb just said, embed yourself into high heaven. That is how you are going to be able to make your transition to Canvas so much sweeter and so much easier. And
it also means that you can, if you end up moving to a different platform. So let's say that, and this probably isn't insane, let's say that at the end of this next school year, they decide to switch platforms. Well, if you don't have everything embedded into that platform, then you have the ability to move it wherever you want to. And the platform you put it in is really just a container.
And Wiser, again, we've talked a lot about Wiser. If you've watched this show more than once, Wiser is one of the deals that are there. The other thing that just like hit me in my head that I didn't put up there, Wakelet is super. The embedding in Wakelet is the same deal, right? So all these tools are going to give you some advantages. Flipgrid, all that kind of wonderful stuff. Anything that you can take from one place, embed it in another place, and still keep the content in a separate platform that you know is the probability of that platform not going away is high. That's what I would definitely do. Rather than, again, putting all your eggs in the same basket. Remember, your Google Drive is not going anywhere. Your Google Docs isn't going anywhere. Google Slides isn't going anywhere. Your Google Forms isn't going anywhere. The only thing that is going to go someplace is Google Classroom. So it would behoove you to put yourself not in some kind of hectic schedule where you're like, oh my God, I need to move all this stuff now, but just move things gradually. Make sure everything is in your Google Drive that you are going to want to utilize for the next school year. And also kind of look into Canvas courses. We're going to probably do some more Canvas stuff to help prepare teachers for that switch ourselves. But really look into organizing your class so that it's optimal for learning rather than having a scenario in which, we just dumping stuff on pages, because that's when things get no bueno. What say you, Wes?
Agreed. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, thinking, like, trying to future proof yourself is helpful if you do keep things and resources kind of in these external tools and then add them in and use Canvas just as your framework, then you'll be golden. If for whatever reason they move away from Canvas, you're not like uber invested in it. And actually, that's a technique we use in software development too. We don't want to be too sticky to one particular platform. We want the ability to move from one thing to the other in the event that it gets too expensive, it no longer fits our needs, they discontinue an important feature or whatever.
Yep. But I mean, the grand scheme of things, we're both probably outside the box thinkers in terms of how to utilize Canvas. One of the things I would definitely deal with if I was either unfamiliar with Canvas, uncomfortable with Canvas, or like concerned about where to begin would be all of the things you've built so far this school year for your distance learning, to categorize those things into two buckets. Stuff that's super dope and I want to use it next year, and stuff that is absolute garbage that I was like, nah, I'm good with it. And don't get rid of the super garbage stuff. Put it in a Google folder, because you might have some reason to come and revisit the super garbage stuff. All right, because the Google Drive, if you're CCSD, you've got an unlimited Google Drive. It's not like that stuff has to be deleted. But look at the stuff that you really like, and look at why you really like it. what units those things go in, so they are all connected some kind of way or whatever, and just kind of inventory that stuff out because that's going to put you ahead of the game in terms of I already know what I want and where I'm going to put it, and like I think long range plans are going to be very very important to either refine or to create between now and the end of the school year proper so that you do have a month and a half, 2 months to kind of just unplug your brain with the idea that I can very quickly, spin up my first module, 2 modules, 3 modules because I have all this stuff already planned. What say you, Webbs?
I'd say too, don't try to inventory it all at once, especially if you have a lot of stuff. Spend like 5 minutes every day. Just set a 5 minute timer, categorize until the timer goes off, and then you're done, move on. And you'll be surprised how much progress you'll make in categorizing those things. And again, don't try to make it like, oh, well, I gotta, like either you want to keep it or you don't. And don't worry about moving. And basically, I would do exactly like Mike said, like make 2 folders, things I want to keep, things I want to dump, things that or I want to I would call it the recycle bin because maybe you'll revisit it, maybe it'll hang out there until the end of time, but like have certain things that go to the recycle bin that need more iterations of work, and then the things that you do really like that you are proud of. Also, it might be a good exercise of like, hey, I'm not a garbage teacher, like there are some things that I really enjoyed that I made this year, kind of like a confidence boost. Put those into a separate folder of things to keep, and only do it for like 5 minutes at a time though. Otherwise, you'll be stuck in this sense of dread of like, it's such a big project. Where do I even start? And probably never do it. So
name, that uncluttered lady. What's her name?
Oh, Marie Kondo. Is that her name?
Yeah.
I think it's Marie Kondo. Yeah. If it doesn't spark joy, put it in the recycle bin.
Or so one of the cool things about Canvas is this the way that you can exploit it for collaborative teaching. All right. So it might be a scenario.
That's something I hadn't even. I guess I kind of did touch on it at the beginning, so but yeah, I would agree with this.
What you do is like, look, fam, go sit with your best teacher friend and like, look, I don't want to look at my stuff. I want you to look at some of the stuff. All right, cool. And have a second party look at your stuff and say, oh, this is really cool. Because you may think something's absolutely garbage. Somebody else may say, oh, that's really cool. I wish I could do that. And being able to have another sounding board to say, okay, cool, this is the way you could reuse that, this is the way we could do this or whatever. And the other thing that look at is tools that are versatile. So Swiss Army knife lessons that can be applied to multiple modalities and multiple units. So, hey, I got this dynamite unit you do for poetry. Cool. Why not give kids every opportunity they can to write poetry in order to do their assignment to show that they understand things? Cool. I can use this one tool that I built for all these different units rather than creating these unique assignments for all the units. Giving kids an idea of choice, but also saving yourself some work on the back end because ideally, if I'm you going into next school year where there's a high probability there's some kind of hybrid weird thing or something, my idea would be I want school to be as RTI friendly as possible. And that would be, I want my kids to be able to go as fast or as slow as they need to, and for me to pull kids out when I need to. When I see that Bob has failed this math test 3 times, you know what? I don't want to go through the process of the red or the blue folder. I want to go in and nip this in the bud right now so Bob I don't have to do all that extra work of progress monitoring. I'm already doing it. Canvas does a very good job of showing you when the kids logged in. If you have enough assignments and pre-test and post-test and things like that, you're going to see those ebbs and flows very easily.
I'd say too, look at what already exists for a model. Like if you're not sure how much content to add, look at things like, free online courses like Coursera or edX to see like, okay, what amount of assignments do they give per unit, to get a feel for how courses are structured. I was going to say too, my last year in the classroom, I did something like this, but not virtual, where I had students, like I took the first few standards that I was having them work on and basically just gave them a checklist of like, when you can demonstrate this particular skill to me, you will get that badge and we'll call it a day. And the motivation of students to be able to just like want to collect the badges, want to move through the content at their own pace. They even came up with their own ways of practicing that particular skill because it was up to them how they wanted to do it. I was available to talk to them in small group if they needed support. And I feel like that was a like slightly janky way of doing this same concept.
Slightly janky way.
I mean, it was all based on I like made copies and cut out their little badges and they pasted them into these construction paper folders that they made. But yeah, it felt like but it was highly motivating for them and they were allowed to go at their own pace and decide what worked best. They got to decide what they wanted to work on because not all the things were linear. So they could say, I'm going to work on skill 4 and I'm going to work on skill 2. And so, and I felt almost guilty because I did basically nothing. I just gave them, here's what you have to learn, and here are some optional activities you could do to be able to learn that skill. But they really enjoyed it.
No, I mean, next week we'll talk a little bit about tables and why tables are super important, no matter what you're building inside the Canvas pages. Um, Also, like if you're not aware, go log into Canvas. Give yourself like a 10-minute timer and go. There is a Canvas Commons. If you're a CCSD teacher, it's full of stuff. Go and see what other people are doing. The best way to learn a skill is to steal the skill first, right? So it's not every great artist is also a great thief. And you will see things that inspire you. You'll see things that you will all out straight up copy. But I think every great artist also elevates the things that they've stolen, right? So this was this thing, this was this idea this person had. Let me make this idea a little bit better, and then somebody steals from you and makes it better, and somebody steals from them and makes it better. But there is the commons that's available for you. Give yourself 5-10 minutes. Just look at the stuff that's inside there. What I would tell you to do is just, I think Webbs is on board with this as well. Like the trying to do things weekly, like this is Monday's lesson, and Tuesday, Wednesday. That is probably not the strategy for success here. That's going to be a lot of stress. It's going to be a lot of trying to figure out how do I switch the buttons out and move the buttons around, and then now you.
As you say, that is not the hustle.
Oh, that's not the hustle at all. That's straight. that's what we call in the streets hustling backwards, right? So we don't want a situation where now you're putting stress on the learner to have to keep up with you for some arbitrary reason that doesn't exist, right? Like there is no keeping up with anybody because this is a virtual space, and if I want to go and work after school, I should be able to work after school without being penalized for it. And if we're talking about Schlecky, one of the things I think is Schlecky in this whole conversation has been forgotten, right? Doug Reeves is writing little booty books about how to do online learning or whatever. But Schlecky's whole idea of engagement is I should want to do this on my own time. Now, if the course isn't something I want to do on my own time, why are we creating the course, right? And I think keeping that type of mind first and saying, how do I get a kid who would be otherwise uninterested in this subject to say, nope, I'm putting down my Xbox. I'm about to go do that bird assignment that Miss Jones gave me at 8:30 at night. That to me is true teaching. That's where you've reached the pinnacle of like you are somebody we bow down to when Bob puts the Xbox controller down because he's interested in doing what he needs to do.
So a couple things. One, we're currently running a Canvas cohort where we're walking folks through like how do you design personas for figuring out what your students are interested in, how to get them more engaged, how to like really increase the odds that they're going to want to engage in your assignment, how to reflect on your assignment, thinking about it in the same way that we do user testing and software development. All of those things are included in the course that we're currently, or the like cohort we're working through. If you have an interest in that, let us know and we can probably run it again or do some version of it to help folks out. The second thing I was going to say was if you're watching this on replay and you have thoughts, questions, comments, things you're concerned about, shoot those in the comments. We still see them later and we can include them in future episodes. And there was one other thing. Oh, and you don't have to steal everything. Like maybe there's only an element of something that you particularly like that you want to steal and elevate for yourself. Don't think that, okay, I have to take all of this or none of it. It's not a zero-sum game, I believe is the phrase. Yep. Or maybe I'm using that wrong. I don't know. But there is a continuum of you can steal bits and pieces of a thing. It doesn't have to be like the whole thing. So also keep that in mind.
Watch TV too. Like, I mean,
yeah, listen to music, watch movies.
All that stuff, yo. You get all kind of ideas. Forge and fire. As soon as I get off this show, I'm going to put it right back on. I have never forged anything in my life, but I'm addicted to the show. So I will forge, fire
It's
watch,
true.
binge watch while I am doing my building stuff later on tonight. But the forgers steal different types of steel. They steal like all kind of stuff, and everyone has access to the same materials, but everyone creates something that is different, which is also the business, right? We want people to come up with stuff that's different.
If you're fatigued by creating, try being a consumer of things. I've found for myself that when I get when the idea of creating a new thing is exhausting to me, I need to switch over to consuming something, whether that's reading a book, watching a movie, watching a TV show, listening to music, playing a video game, because I feel like those are two. I don't have evidence behind this. Maybe I'll study that in my PhD. There are two very distinct, I feel like, processes, and one feeds the other. So if you drain your creation bucket, you need to refill it by consuming something. And if you overfill your consumption bucket, you need to like create something. Otherwise, you'll feel just as exhausted. It's my theory anyway.
My fifth grade teacher always told me, if you want to be a better reader, be a better writer. If you want to be a better writer, be a better reader. And so
Yeah.
I think there is some validity to that. All right,
Cool.
same bat time, same bat channel on Thursday. We'll see you on Thursday. Go ahead, Webs.
Oh, I'm going to also share the latest issue of Hoodlum Cultured, the newsletter, on our social media in the comments and everything. So if you want to sign up for our newsletter and get the latest, we usually send that out on Sundays, although I think this week's is going to go out on Monday. And it includes like, usually there's like a mini lesson, a link to whatever the most recent episode of Hoodlum Cultured the show is, and a couple other fun little tidbits and woohoos.
Indeed, indeed. So we will see you Thursday with some ideas about how to use tables really creatively in your course. And be well for all our Clark County School District teachers who are going back tomorrow into the buildings. Blessings upon you. And again, stay well, stay motivated, stay hoodlum, homie. Hasta la pasta.
Bye, everybody. Wait.